On January 6th, the United States Congress followed the established legal and constitutional procedure to count the Electoral College votes. As a result, Joe Biden is now President-elect of the United States. Obviously, this result is disappointing to the roughly 75 million Americans who voted to re-elect President Trump. Acknowledging the outcome of the electoral vote does not deny the serious concerns that have been raised about a clearly imperfect process. Unfortunately, on the day of the vote count, there was a disgraceful, illegal, and violent attack on our nation's capital. While at least one, and perhaps several of the provocateurs were radical leftists, at least according to their own social media posts, the attack no doubt included multiple Trump supporters and conspiracy followers of QAnon. We condemn the violent and unlawful attacks in the strongest possible terms, regardless of who perpetrated them or for what reason. There's no excuse for such lawlessness, which ended in a tragic loss of life. Yes, I saw the videos where it appears that Capitol Police opened barricades and doors. But I also saw criminals breaking into the Capitol in violent fashion. That must be condemned, just as the summer violence should be condemned. I do not believe that the vast majority of those who were in D.C. on January 6 had any intention of storming the Capitol. But some clearly did, and that's horrific. There's no way that these individuals can be seen as anything but criminals. Beyond the loss of life and damage to property, the goons who attacked our Capitol also interrupted a constitutional process and threatened our elected representatives. This is precisely why people are so upset. Please understand that we had serious concerns about the election, especially in light of multiple procedural changes and the use of potentially vulnerable machines. And we support legal and constitutional efforts to address those concerns. But the efforts had to be legal and constitutional. Breaking into the Congress does not qualify. We're Constitution fans. We love the United States. This is far more important than any one individual or candidate. Look, some of you may be happy that Donald Trump was sidelined, but don't ignore that 75 million Americans voted for him, and they must not be sidelined solely because they supported a sitting president running for re-election. This is not just about Donald Trump. To put it simply, if we believed that Trump or anyone else was attempting to steal an election, we would absolutely oppose that. Regardless of your party affiliation, the 2020 election process ended with the congressional count of the electoral votes. It is now time to decide about what's next. None of this changes the reality that the process this year was more than messy. And don't tell me that it was the most secure election ever. The truth is that the intelligence community has admitted that they withheld a report on foreign intelligence until after the election. There was foreign interference. Then there's the issue of the massive rule changes made without legislative approval from the state legislature. That was because of the pandemic. You don't have to take my word for it. The state legislatures themselves were leading the complaints. If you want to say that the courts looked into all these irregularities and found them without merit, that's not entirely true. You're misinformed, because even the noted Jonathan Turley, no conservative and no Trump fan, among others, admits that the cases were largely dismissed on procedural rules rather than a review of the evidence. And don't tell me that the voting machines are perfect. Before this election ever happened, there were bipartisan, credible, and authoritative reports on machine vulnerabilities, either due to potential manipulation or potential hacking. That's just a fact. But we've covered all this before, and it became the basis for a large number of members of the House and Senate to object to the certification, following long-held procedures. That's something the Democrats have done many times. It is perfectly lawful and it's acceptable. But the fact is that after listening to the objections, the Congress, led by Vice President Pence, did count the votes and did declare Joe Biden to be president-elect. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm just simply stating the facts. And accepting the outcome of this election should not eliminate the need to make certain that future elections are free and fair. Our nation needs healing. We need to regain confidence in the system. We cannot allow one difficult election and the disruption of our capital to be used as an excuse to ignore good governance. This should be a bipartisan concern because either party could try to rig an election. We must not let them. The second concern that we have is the knee-jerk effort to silence speech. One of the bedrock principles of our nation is free speech. It's sometimes messy, but it's essential to protect our other freedoms. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to look at how addressing future election integrity could happen from a constitutional perspective. We'll also consider how best to protect our First Amendment. So where are we now and what comes next? There are four main issues we need to address. One is future election integrity. Two is the threat to free speech. Three, the risk of radical policies. And four, financial implications for you and your family. In regard to election integrity, we need to make certain that we never have to go through something like this again. Many on the left want to hide behind the fact that courts ignored the cases. They say that this is proof of a clean election. They want to blame Trump and Trump supporters. The truth is, there were significant changes to the election procedures, and they were not approved in every state by the state legislators. Those were valid reasons to raise objections prior to the vote in Congress. At this point now, those procedures can and should be reviewed by the legislatures for future elections. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution reads, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled to in Congress." Now, the courts did refuse to intervene in the midst of an election. That's their long-standing policy. But now that the election is over, I would expect that they would back the legislature in any attempt to address the changes for the future. Legislators hold enormous power, especially the power of the purse strings. They can and should act immediately to examine how elections are conducted in their state. For example, a legislature could change the law so that the state's electors were given to the winner of the national popular vote. I think that'd be a bad idea and would destroy the process of the Electoral College. But many on the left are pushing for that to happen, and it shows that legislators do have that power. In some states, the electors are bound to the winner of the state's popular vote. But in other states, such as Maine and Nebraska, the state may split the electors based on the vote in congressional district. In this election, for example, President Trump won 4 and Biden won 1 in Nebraska. The point is, that's how electors are chosen. It's determined by the state legislature. Courts claim they were reluctant to hear challenges after the election took place because they didn't want to interfere with a vote that's already been cast. But they should support the legislature in setting the rules for future votes. This is where we must learn from the issues of 2020. The battle will be in the state legislatures. Here's a few suggestions. 1, the law on mail-in ballots needs to be addressed. There are guidelines and safeguards that should have been put in place according to the National Election Defense Commission. That's a bipartisan group that was created out of the work of former President Jimmy Carter and James Baker. 2, the laws on observers need to be strengthened. 3, the election officials need to be made more accountable to the legislature. 4, the voter rolls need to be cleaned. Services like Vote Detective could be enabled and supported. 5, there needs to be a preservation of ballots that can be reviewed by optical scan after the election to verify integrity. This will be a battle, but it's the next battle that must be fought. It's a place where you can make a difference. Another big issue we have to face is the threat to free speech from the social media monopolies. The argument has been made that Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook are all private companies and thus have a right to refuse service to anyone. They set the guidelines, and if you break them, you're off their platform. If you don't like their policy, it's a free country, build your own platform. That's a pretty strong argument at first blush, but it fails when you look at the big picture. First, the big players really are monopolies with enormous power. We've already seen what appears to be a coordinated action to destroy Parler, a rising competitor. Second, the big players told Congress that they should be treated differently than any other media companies and deserve special legal protection, like a phone company. They claimed they couldn't control the content on their platform. For example, if two people coordinate a crime over the phone, you don't sue AT&T and Verizon. They're neutral platforms. So Congress agreed with this thinking and established Section 230 under the law. But that privilege was designed to protect free speech, not to destroy it. And this frees social media from any responsibility, allowing them to pick and choose where and how they enforce their rules. It creates the potential for a massive double standard. Because of their enormous power in allowing or disallowing free speech, these same companies can influence elections. We've already seen that Twitter blocked any stories about Hunter Biden's laptop. Polling after the election clearly shows that had this story gotten out and most of people seen it, a significant percentage of voters would have switched from Biden to Trump. So they influenced the election. We also know that Russia and others sought to influence the 2016 election through social media. But here are two facts. One, we cannot allow social media oligarchs to control the election process simply because they have an outdated Section 230 protection. Two, silencing a large portion of the population will not lead to healing for our nation. The very fascism that the social media claim that they hate is being implemented, or at least set up to be implemented, by their policies. By wholesale banning political opponents, these companies are creating the very toxic atmosphere that they claim they want to avoid. People are making purge lists. They're trying to silence and marginalize and even punish their fellow Americans for thought crimes. This is clearly fascism, and it's coming from the progressives. Yes, if someone broke the law and broke into the Capitol, that was criminal activity. We have laws to address that, and we should. But what about the notion that someone should be fired simply for voting for a sitting president of the United States? Should you lose your home or your rights? If we, the people, allow such retribution to take place here and now, it won't be long before we're purging people for all sorts of things. What happens if you choose the wrong power company to heat your home, or attend the wrong school, or buy the wrong car, or even the wrong toilet paper? Can we purge people for that as well? Should we allow the tyranny of the majority, or worse, the tyranny of a few? A fascist would say yes. A freedom-loving American says no way. That's why we need a freedom-driven solution to the social media dilemma. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that social media shouldn't have it both ways. If they get special legal protection, they need to allow alternative viewpoints. I'm not advocating that they have to carry criminal activity. They don't and shouldn't, but they can't be so arbitrary that they ban true political discourse. Section 230 must be reformed or repealed. Second, monopolies should not be allowed to destroy rising competition. I saw that some of the horrible things that Parler had on their platform. It wasn't good. But I've also seen the double standard because Twitter has hosted some horrible hate speech as well. When the existing social media companies work together to silence people and eliminate competition, there's a problem and a threat to our democracy. These companies wield enormous power, and with great power must come great responsibility. As you already know, these are the same social media that have taken it upon themselves to silence a sitting president of the United States. Even the ACLU and European leaders see a threat in this. Imagine that. The ACLU and Angela Merkel are siding with Donald Trump on this one. What feels like a Marxist takeover in our communications has caused a lot of people to be very upset. Then when the people find out that alternatives, such as Parler, have been silenced by the big tech companies, they feel like there's something terribly wrong. This does not promote healing. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll focus on the two next big issues. fighting radical policies and addressing the financial implications. Before the break, we were discussing the threat to free speech that exists today. But there's the potential for radical new policies to make things a whole lot worse. We talk a lot about unrestricted warfare coming from China. What you need to know is that the radical progressive left is also using the same strategies to take control of America. They want to take control permanently. We're in the midst of a color revolution, and we've explained a lot of this in our previous episodes. This is a fight for the future of America and the world, and it has tremendous implications for you, your family, and future generations. The Green New Deal, for example, is back on the table. You can expect higher taxes. There will be fiscal responsibility push to pay for all the massive COVID expenses. There'll be a push to re-regulate everything. President Trump slashed regulations, but the Democrats love them. They want the permanent bureaucracy to have increasing control of your life. There'll be a huge push to increase immigration with a path to citizenship. Democrats see this as a path to permanent election victories. All of these policies are promoted by the radical left and socialists, and unfortunately, it is the agenda for a Biden-Harris administration. So what do we do about it? Now that the vote is over, we have to move to a new battleground that has to do with your money. This is where you can and should make a difference. If all freedom-loving Americans will reorient their financial thinking starting right now, we can have an impact. We call it weaponizing your money. Before doing that, you have to stop funding your own demise. Think about the 3 things you can do with your money. 1, you can spend it. 2, you can save it or invest it. And 3, you can give it away. All 3 are important. Do your money habits line up with your values? You probably have given at least partially thought to your giving. You thought, well, I'll give to this or that, and that should line up with your values. For example, if you oppose Donald Trump, it's unlikely you gave to his campaign. If you oppose Joe Biden, it's unlikely you gave to his campaign. So your giving is probably started down the right track. But does your spending line up with your values? Or are you feeding the beast? And what about your investments? Do you own Twitter because you think it's a great company? You may be surprised to find out that it is in your portfolio if you have an index fund. Here's the point. You're living your life. You're raising a family. You're trying to hold on to your job or keep customers. I get it. Life is challenging, especially now. But you cannot neglect your money. Jesus said in Luke 16, chapter 16, verse 11, that if you can't be faithful with worldly wealth, who's ever going to trust you with true riches? We have a responsibility to use our money in line with our values. We call it weaponizing your money. This is going to be the biggest battleground from now until the next election. In addition, we'll have lots of financial upheaval that you may have to face. For example, there are strong signals that inflation is about to return in a big way. You likely noticed that the last time you visited a store or got takeout from a restaurant. Price pressures are enormous, and there's been so much money printing to keep the economy afloat during the pandemic. At the same time, China has gotten increasingly aggressive. The Chinese have plans to become the dominant economy in the world over the next 5 years and to punish anyone who stands in their way. At the same time, we have a stock market that is at all-time highs despite the economic problems of a global pandemic and despite the huge change in policies that we can expect from a Biden-Harris administration. Now, add to all of that, the American companies have decided now all of a sudden they're going to get highly political with your money. Do you own shares in Marriott? If so, your company has decided that they're going to change their long-standing policy about bipartisan giving and refuse to give any money to a politician who questioned the 2020 election results in Congress. Now, mind you, they didn't do that in 2016 when Barbara Boxer and others stood up and questioned Donald Trump's election in Congress at the same moment, but they're doing it now. That's right. They have a right to do that, but if you're a Marriott shareholder, they're doing it with your money. The far left has been weaponizing your money at the corporate level for years. What we're talking about is weaponizing your money at the shareholder level and making your voice heard. When Twitter banned President Trump from their platform, the shareholders spoke by selling their stock. Twitter fell 12% the next trading day, and the company lost $5 billion in market cap. Now, you may be wondering how you can keep up with all of this. You want to do the right thing, but you don't know what to do or how to do it. Fortunately, there are some very good financial advisors who should be willing to help you weaponize your money to protect your values. The issue is, do they know how to do it? The far left is pushing ESG, environmental, social justice, and governance. Those are code words for a radical leftist agenda in many ways. Our polling indicates that most Americans would prefer LSV, which is investing in liberty, security, and values. The bad news is too few financial advisors know how to make the switch and help their clients. The good news, the Economic War Room has partnered with Liberty University to train any interested advisors. But we need your help. Our training plans were temporarily delayed by COVID and the election. But because of where we are today, the need for training is greater than ever before. Here's how you can help. Nominate your financial advisor to look at our program. Whether you work with a stockbroker, financial planner, insurance agent, or CPA, we want to help them help you. What we're asking is that you provide us the name and contact information of anyone who helps you invest. And then tell them about our training. That's it. To do that, simply go to economicwarroom.com/advisor. That's going to take you less than a minute, but it could be the most important thing you can do today. Then after you've done that, call your advisor and encourage him or her to take our upcoming training class. Say, I want you to take this. We've been in this fight a long time, and now our training has become critical. Advisors will be invited to join the National Security Investment Consultant Institute, or NSIC Institute for short. They will learn how to help protect your investments. More importantly, they will learn how to help you weaponize your money to defend your values and our collective liberty. We're also developing a client track for those who manage their own money. Everything we've talked about will be summarized in a free economic battle plan. You can get your copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.